Welcome to a brand new episode of Get Real with Kacey Kasem. It's the podcast that takes a look behind the scenes of the fantasy football industry through interviews with some of your favorites in the business. On this episode, I sat down with Nathan Cheatham, the founder and co-owner of IDP+, formerly known as IDPGuys. He's also worked on websites for the Fantasy Football Expo, Campus to Canton, and SFB Avi Makers. We delve into a variety of topics, including his experience in the fantasy football industry, his work in web and graphic design, his love for pop punk music, the exciting energy of the Scott Fishbowl live drafts, the rebranding of IDPGuys to IDP+, his early involvement with IDP, seeing Fall Out Boy for the first time, his journey from working with the school newspaper in college to running a fantasy football company, and so much more. Make sure to follow Nathan on Twitter at NateCheat. Follow me on Twitter at the Kacey Kasem and the podcast at GetReal_pod. Make sure to follow Sunday Dreamers Club on Twitter as well at Sunday_Dreamers. And make sure to tag photos in the fantasy football t-shirts you purchase. Check out SundayDreamersClub.com for fantasy football inspired t-shirts. Also, you can find my content with South Harmon Fantasy Football, Roto Baller, and Fantasy Six Pack. Get Real with Kacey Kasem is a proud member of the DAP network. And with that, here's my conversation with Nathan Cheatham on Get Real with Kacey Kasem. Been here before. Okay, got a cool guest today. We'll get to know more about him and his journey in this fantasy football space. But before we get into all of that, let's just start off. Let's introduce Nathan. Nathan, what's going on?
Not much. Just getting through my work day and happy to be here on your show. I've been a fan for a long time.
Well, appreciate that so much. Thank you so much. And I've been a fan of yours for a while, and I know that you're kind of like an OG in this fantasy football space. So we'll get into all of that. But before we do, how did you have a relationship with sports when you were growing up? Did you have one? Did you play, watch, or how did that go?
So growing up, I always enjoyed sports. It all came in different phases, really. So early 90s, I was a big hockey fan. And what's interesting as I reflect on my fandom over the years, it all correlates to when a Detroit sports team was good. Because I'm from Detroit area in Michigan. And so mid 90s, when I was probably, 8 to 10 years old, the Red Wings were amazing. They were hot. They were the team to be watching in hockey. And so I have memories of, my mom in the living room with the game on, and the way our hallway and couch aligned, it allowed me to sit in front of the couch and watch the hockey game without her knowing that I was out of bed. So early on I was doing that, watching hockey. And then as I grew up, I started watching basketball. So the Pistons were really good in like 2005 time period. That's when I was going to high school, and I was playing basketball for the JV and varsity team back then. So really big into basketball at that time. And then I actually didn't get into football until 2008, 2009, when I was introduced to, going to a football party, having wings, and being able to drink during it. So, which, Detroit's never had a really good football team, so makes sense why it took so long.
That does make sense. But, I like that. I like that a lot because Detroit, I haven't had a whole lot of Detroit fans on the show. Usually it's Bills for some reason. That seems to be one of the big teams that people are about. But you're, like you said, a Detroit native. You ended up moving at some point to New England. When did all that happen?
So right around that same time period of 2008, 2009, got to watch just some really horrific stuff happen with the economy in Michigan. And so, just decided to pack up and to go anywhere. And the person I was seeing at the time, she was from this area. And so mentioned, hey, let's, move back closer to her parents. And so, that brought me out here, living in Connecticut now since, 2009, and I absolutely love it. It's an amazing area, and it's funny that I come here, start watching football, and then still root for the Lions when the Patriots
Right.
are 2 hours away.
Hey, but I love it. I love that you stuck with Detroit. So that's awesome. And when you were growing up, did you have sort of like a career path that you wanted to go down as you got older? Or did you like a specific job that you were thinking about doing when you got older?
Yeah, no, not at all. I hated school growing up. I would go, and it was mainly I enjoyed socializing with friends, and I was the one that was always flagged for talking to the neighbor, the person next to me and not paying attention. But I still managed to squeak by with decent grades. And I can honestly say that I jumped around from many different things that I wanted to do, from, when I was a young kid. You got the firefighter, astronaut, policeman kind of thing that young boys go through. And then when I was in high school, I went from I was going to be a preacher at one point. I was going to be a school teacher. Yeah. And to be honest, I did 8 years of college. So it took college to figure out what I was going to do too.
Don't worry. I was in college for that long as well. I couldn't figure out, kept changing my major, and it was all that fun stuff. So yeah. So, but you did finally figure out everything that you were wanting to get into, and you have a background in journalism and graphic design, web design. How did you decide on getting into that?
Yeah, so I mean, it all it makes sense looking at my childhood where I'm at today, because I was so social, and because I was really into Legos and building things. I was very technical. So, when you fast forward to my college experience, I went in thinking I was going to get a degree in psychology, and I was going to help people with themselves. And that quickly, I think within my first year, I was already away from that. And my school newspaper actually wrote a article that I just so vehemently disagreed with that I wrote a letter to the editor back, and then wound up getting involved with that newspaper. And from there, they were kind of on the verge of collapse. So I joined, I wrote with them for a semester, and then the next year going into it, there was 2 people left. It was myself and one other person, and we kind of drew straws on who was going to lead this thing. At that point, I started to catch this journalism writing bug, and so not only did I end up becoming the editor of the school newspaper of 2 people, I switched to a journalism degree, and over the course of 3 years, I grew that newspaper to, I think at the end there were 30 students that were involved. We had launched a whole web component to it, and this was a community college. So, I was kind of packing my bags after 3 years of, I can't really stay here any longer. I've got my degree. They're all looking at me weird, move on to the next step. And so I went to university nearby in Connecticut, Central Connecticut State University, and went into their journalism program, and I hated it. I hated the director of the program. They were very the best way to put it is they didn't like outside people coming in and making any changes, doing anything. They were set up so that, you came in as a freshman and you could kind of align your school career through their program. And so, I was an older student. I didn't actually start college until I was 24. And so I was, at this point, I had this experience from my community college, which absolutely loved me because of the time and effort I put into it and the growth I was able to create. And I'm coming to a university where I'm I already know the ins and outs of school. So don't tell me I can't do something, which just it caused a major problem. And it really kind of showed me something that I didn't really like, a face of journalism I just didn't care for.
Yeah.
And so at that point, I had already been developing an interest in graphic design and website development. And so it was a pretty easy change for me to get into the design program. And at that point, just the creativity of everything that I've always been interested in kind of came out, and being able to craft something and all of those technical aspects, like it just, all of the synergies kind of came together, and I was like, I love this. I love doing this. And and at that point I realized, this is what I want to be doing.
So moving back a little bit, in your situation, when did you start playing fantasy football?
So, I was introduced to, this, to football and watching it with friends in 2009. They were really into fantasy football. They had been playing since, pen and paper days. And I watched them. I watched what they would do and how it created this atmosphere of like, teasing each other and talking crap to each other in this fun manner, and the bragging rights and everything. So that first year I didn't get to play, but I watched them and what they were doing. And in year 2, so this would have been 2010, they didn't have an opening in their league. So I created my own, and most of them, joined it as a second league. And that league is still going to this day. Wow. So probably about, close to 15 years now.
Wow. It's cool to see a league stay together for that long, because I know it's hard. It's so hard to keep a league together that long. So much props to all of y'all for staying together. Yeah.
It's, the core is still there, but it's definitely one of those, there's some fringe guys that kind of come in and go, and we've been really trying to push it towards, it's all been online, pushing it towards like getting local people so that we can have, I love in-person drafts.
Yes.
That is, I experienced it for the first time at the Fantasy Football Expo a few years back as part of Draft Night Out. And anytime I can do that again, I try to.
Yeah. Oh, man. Live drafts, drafting in person and being able to be around people and just have that experience is so great. So I agree with you on that. We will talk more about the Fantasy Football Expo and more about your background as we get into this podcast, just for everybody that's listening. But talking more about just starting out in fantasy football, was there any concerns or anything that you struggled maybe with at the beginning when you first started playing fantasy?
The funny part about that is I won my first year.
That happens. That seems to happen.
And it really came down to, I was so bored in class that I would just pick at my teams, and I would zero in on the data of it, who's trending within, given couple weeks. And, in having watched football for 2 years and really didn't know all of the rules and everything, for the fact that I was able to win that first year, a lot of my league mates were like, there's some collusion going on here. Something's wrong. This shouldn't happen. To this day, I have a rivalry with one of my good friends because I beat him in that first year and then went on to beat him again for the championship late, a few years later, and he's never won the league. So it comes up periodically. It's
lovely to have those little jabs that you can give to somebody when you beat them and they haven't won, and the trash talk is fun. It's all good, and in having a league that has been together for so long, I'm sure that league's completely different than a lot of the other leagues you're in now, because you've been playing fantasy football for a long time now. So how different is what you're doing now versus like when you first started in fantasy?
Yeah. So one of the funny things is my first league I started off, it had IDP, which when you talk to a lot of people, that is a very rare case. Now, compared to what I play now versus then, it's like we have like 6 defenders. It's very kind of vanilla on offense and defense. It's kind of a basic league. And now I play some pretty extreme leagues. I at one point, due to COVID, got way over my head with probably like 30 dynasty leagues. I play in, like the Scott Fish Bowl, which has, 3,000 players. We host a charity tournament of our own called the IDP Invitational. It's fashioned off of Scott Fish Bowl, but with IDP included. And that has a equal amount of offense to defense. So you're starting 11 defenders. There's special scoring per position. This past year, the Kings Classic moved into having an IDP league as well, which Gary Davenport put together some pretty amazing scoring for that. And we have a team there that I'm involved with. I don't necessarily manage it as much as my co-owner Ricky does, but these are kind of the leagues that I got into. I like to get into the weeds of complexities. And there was one point I was involved in like salary cap leagues. I absolutely love the economics of a salary cap league with, the auction draft where there's like 100 players on the board and you can pick, and you're bidding on one player and then you get outbid to the point that you don't want to purchase them anymore. So then you shift all of that money to somebody else. And it's just kind of very amazing to watch all of that happen in real time, and to see how players, the costs and the prices when they actually do fall off the board.
Yeah. Well, how about, okay, let's talk about IDP, because we've been talking about it a lot on this podcast lately. It seems like more and more people are becoming aware of what it is all about and how to play and getting, they're dipping their toes in the water. But people listening to the show might not know what IDP is. And I'm sure you answer that question a lot, but can you just kind of explain what IDP is for the people that don't know what it is?
Yeah, so the acronym stands for Individual Defensive Players, which just means that you have players like Joey Bosa, Bobby Wagner, Aiden Hutchinson on your team, like you would have a Justin Fields or a Amon-Ra St. Brown on the offensive side. And then they're scored based off of defensive stats, generally tackles, assisted tackles. You got sacks, interceptions. There's tackle for losses and pass defenses, those kind of things. And so it's just viewing both sides of the ball, of the game. And so when everyone's cheering and yelling for the touchdown on the offensive side, you could be cheering, when the offense switches to defense, you could be cheering for the tackle, the sack, or, the big plays when an interception happens and return for a touchdown. Those are really high scoring plays in IDP.
And what kind of advice do you have for people who want to get started playing IDP?
Yeah. The first one is to do it, jump in, get into a league. At IDP Plus, we have a lot of leagues that we put on for beginners, usually closer to the beginning of the season. And, definitely consume a lot of information and go to different sources, because everybody's got a different play style. It's very it's like the Wild West, to be honest. It's the frontier of fantasy football right now, much like Dynasty used to be. Dynasty's kind of starting to be formed, and, there's kind of the way to do it. Now IDP is this, and it's growing to a point that I think it could be, the next kind of dynasty where it comes in and more people start really taking it seriously, and it kind of forms this here's how you do it. So, taking a lot of content creators' information, obviously at idpplus.com, or there's Fantasy and Frames. Dynasty Nerds has IDP information, Football Guys. It is definitely a growing platform.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And you've brought up IDP Plus for a few times in the show, and you also talked about starting a podcast. How did you decide that content was something that you wanted to go down that road?
Yeah. So my roommate this was 2016. He's the one that got me into football to begin with back in like 2009. And he was in the fantasy league with me, and we would just hang out. He's my best friend. It's Johnny the Greek. He's pretty well known in fantasy Twitter, and him and I would just talk about football. And at the time, I was involved with a podcast about the Detroit Lions. It's called Detroit Lions Podcast. Funny enough, they had a website, and I was helping as the editor of it. And so I would call in, I kind of volunteered to run fantasy leagues for them with their community, and I would call into their podcast and give updates on, who in the league was winning, how things were going, that kind of stuff. And so I had this idea where I was like, well, I'm doing all this for this guy. It's kind of fun. He doesn't really have any interest in fantasy football. Why not do it myself? So I talked to my roommate, Johnny, and we were like, yeah, let's do this. Let's come up with an angle, a niche. Like, what are we going to do? And we kind of scoured the internet. And even back 10 years ago, there were so many fantasy football podcasts and websites and stuff. But back then there was really nothing for IDP. There were about 2 other podcasts that we could find. And so we thought, well, we talk about IDP all the time because of, the league and everything. Let's take that angle. And so we did. And we came up with the title for our podcast. And this is, so we're IDP Plus now. This is our previous brand, which was IDPGuys, which was literally, the subject was IDP, and we were 2 guys. That is the amount of thought we put into it.
Like it.
Yeah. And so, having some background with marketing and design and stuff, and I started picking up knowledge and research in audio, technical engineering, that kind of stuff to figure out how to produce a podcast. This was before things like StreamYard, which made it so easy. Like, thinking about like the amount of equipment I had before StreamYard to get anything to work, and I would go through like Adobe Audition to record, and now it's just, just hook up your microphone and open up StreamYard and record, you're good. So things have gotten a lot easier in the last, 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, I've seen it happen just like before I even had a podcast, just guesting on people's shows, and all the stuff we had to do to make sure that everything worked out right and it could be edited properly and everything else. So to see that now it's just like jump into StreamYard, it's, it's not as scary too, to think about trying to start a podcast from scratch right now, because there's so many tools available to you right now.
Yeah.
It's crazy to see. So I'm glad you brought all that up.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a big deal back then to get a podcast going. And now it's like, man, for about $25, I could start a new podcast from scratch.
Hey everyone, Kacey Kasem here. I want to take a moment to tell you about Sunday Dreamers Club, my fantasy football inspired t-shirt store. If you're looking for unique, stylish, and comfortable apparel that showcases your love for fantasy football, look no further than SundayDreamersClub.com. Whether you're gearing up for the next big game, hosting a draft party, or just want to sport some awesome gear, Sunday Dreamers Club has got you covered. With a variety of designs and styles to choose from, there's something for every fantasy football fan out there. Your support means the world to me, and there are so many ways you can help me grow this new small business. Grab a shirt or two for yourself or as a gift for your fantasy football league mates, or you can spread the word to your friends and family. Every bit helps, and I truly appreciate your support. Thanks for listening, and now let's get back to the show. Right. And it's awesome. And that's awesome. You know, I really like taking in content. And so it's really cool to see how it's evolved. But going back to just having a website and getting it out there, getting an audience, getting more people to consume your content. How did you guys go about doing that?
Yeah. So when we did our first season as a podcast, we didn't have anything but the podcast stream that we were running through and a Twitter account. And we saw, okay growth. I think by the end of it, we had like 250 downloads an episode. Not, we didn't blow up or anything. It wasn't super awesome, but we were growing an audience. People were interested. And so going into that second season, I was thinking, well, it would make sense to have like a URL that we could give people that just had our latest shows, just a podcast stream. I wasn't going to do anything crazy with it. And at the time I was in a group chat with Tyler Gee from Fantasy Football Franchise, talk about way back. He was doing some really great stuff with his podcast and website and had like a group of writers, and I was getting involved with helping editing with that. And I happened to mention like, hey, I'm going to start a website and we're going to just post our podcast to it. And a couple people chimed in, one of them actually being Sam Lane, who went on to win the Scott Fish Bowl that year. And they said, hey, we would like to write IDP content for you because there's not a lot of it on the web, out on the web. And they had interest in it. And so I was like, okay. And I kind of shifted gears with the way I created the website. And that was, kind of how we evolved into becoming a blog news site for IDP. And over the course of that first year, we discovered like Joey the Tooth. He recently went on to Football Guys. Gary Van Dyke was part of that team that first year. And obviously, like I said, Sam Lane. And with my experience in journalism, I kind of took a role of like, okay, well, we've got some raw talent and let me see if I can help them, learn some better ways of writing and that kind of stuff. So that was kind of what I did, my model. We were completely free. There was no subscription. It was just content and putting it out there. And we saw, again, decent growth in the podcast, decent growth on the web. And over the next 7-8 years, we've just evolved into what we are now. And this past year, we've gone through a rebrand, mainly because we want to open ourselves up to more options than just IDP. IDP Plus is supposed to indicate that, like, yes, our roots are IDP, but we do more.
Awesome.
And with that, we also wanted to be kind of inclusive, because now we've grown beyond just two guys that talk about IDP,
right? And
there's a diverse group of people all contributing to this brand.
Yeah, and you guys are basically like a family over there, because there are a lot of really great people that work as a part of IDP Plus. And when you go into looking for people, when you're trying to come up with the right fit for your brand, for your site, what do you kind of look for in people to come on board?
Yeah. The biggest component I look for is like, the best way to put it, like, is self-starter. somebody that has the drive to keep them going. Because, with a large group that we have, there's not a whole lot of individual attention that I dole out. We have leadership and we have people that check in, and we will help you if you ask for help. But a lot of times what I see with the industry is there's people, you have two kinds of people. There's people that are really hungry. They might not know the direction, but they're walking, and all they need is someone to just help guide them down the path. And then there are other people where they don't really know what to do and they don't want to jump into it.
Right.
There are places for those people that are definitely out there, but the way we kind of run our business is, look, we want you to have the drive and we want to just help direct you and get you to where you want to go.
Yeah. And that's great. Being able to do that, just as even when I put out content on my own, just being able to know that I have the drive, and I get it. Sometimes it takes a while, but just having a website with so many different personalities, so many different creative minds. I mean, I'm sure that's really awesome, but had you ever had to hire people like that before, or, bring people on board somewhere like that before, or was this your first experience, figuring out how to bring people on board?
Well, this goes back to when I was in college and I was growing that small school newspaper from 2 people to 30. It was the exact same situation. So I'd already had this whole experience where, we're trying to put out a product on campus and we're not paying anybody. And it's just about finding people with drive. And that was a lot of okay, hey, we've got clear deadlines we have to get to, and identifying who will help us get to these deadlines and who needs a lot of help to get there. And then it's how much time and investment we're going to put into that, because we couldn't not put something out because we would lose our funding with the school. So I just kind of took that mentality of okay, we're going to find people that can help push us forward, and kind of really invest in that. And I took that mentality to this, and it's got us where we are now.
It's great to see how that worked out for you, and then going just into having a website, and there's challenges sometimes. Everything happens with technology going down, or new things happening all the time, or just a lot coming at you at one time. So have you had any sort of challenges that you'd have to overcome as, this business owner of a fantasy football content website?
Yeah. I would almost say daily. There's always a challenge. There's always something. One of my greatest strengths in this is my diverse experience, I would say. Having gone to school for the 8 years and building a newspaper kind of from the ground up and everything on campus, there's rarely something that comes across that I can't tackle that's a challenge. And there's a lot of times where I put a challenge in front of myself because I just screwed up. So there's been and that's both on the technical and the relationship side. There are times where look, like I said, we invest in the people that help push us forward. Sometimes that causes negative issues with people that might not be pushing us forward. And there's a way of handling that, and there's a very clear way not to handle that. And I've done all of it, in the 7 years. Look, from a website owner's perspective, there sometimes comes a bit of competition that you can get into with other people in Twitter and the space and everything. And, I definitely went through that at a point. I think at this point it's been about 5 or 6 years since I've been there. And I had to learn that, one, there's a bigger world out there than Twitter. Especially in fantasy football. If you think of the amount of people out there that watch football and are interested in fantasy football, and you take that as like your circle, the amount that are on Twitter is probably really little, little. So like this, any sort of drama or stuff that comes from that, it's just honestly kind of pathetic, and I definitely had fed into that at one point and had to learn that, look, you just got to take a bigger view of the world and be working towards, the larger piece of the pie outside of Twitter. And so, yeah, there's a lot of growth and maturing and stuff that has to be done, especially, being a website owner and working with people, especially volunteers. So I try and be very sensitive to the way I act and what I ask of people so that, this thing, it's got to be fun. If people aren't having fun playing fantasy football and writing for free or for very little, it's not going to happen, So you got to give them the value and feeling that they are being recognized, they're learning something, and they're doing something that they're willing to give their time for.
And I know that you're big into helping content creators learn, get better with what they're doing. For someone who wants to get better at what they're doing, what kind of advice do you have for those individuals?
It's look at what other people are doing. Find your favorite piece of content and look at how is it created? What's the, how are they marketing it? How are they composing it? You can learn a lot by just trying to recreate what someone else is doing. And if they're already successful, that you're recreating something that can work. And then, you just make it for yourself. Do it in a way that you would want to do it. Do it in the context of what you want. And look, this goes beyond fantasy football. Like, when I was a couple years ago, I was trying to get into this project where I was going to launch a service to be a piece of advice for content creators. It was I can't remember the name of the brand anymore, but I was looking at a creator for marketing a web design advice and mimicking like how he was creating his content and doing it in this different context. And, it was a way for me to learn and extend my skills a little bit. And, I wish I was able to continue on that path to see like where I would be at now and how that would have played out. But that is really the best advice I could give is, try and be observant of how other people are successful and try and utilize that in your own content.
Have you seen any trends or any ways that people are putting out content that have been happening recently? Because I know it's ever changing. So have you seen anything that's been working really well lately?
Yeah. Short form content has been really blowing up. Being able to create a visual that's within a minute to 3 minutes. And there's definitely a hierarchy of like, there's really good content, short form. That's like, your TikTok stuff where people are doing skits and things. And then, there are the people that are repurposing their podcasts into short form, so that's been a growing trend that I want to say has been picking up in the last year. We just started actually doing it ourselves, and it's tough because sometimes just repurposing a podcast on StreamYard doesn't look the greatest. Right. Cutting it into that the horizontal or the vertical and kind of really focusing in, and it takes a lot of skill and time. So that is definitely a trend that's been growing, and I'm trying to think of anything else. From a website standpoint, being able to use some of these services, I think Medium is one. There's another one where you can essentially start writing without having to really build a website, but still get that feel of having a URL, having the posts out there, and get started really quickly. And that stuff is out there. So the ability to get going has just gotten easier.
Yeah, that's that's so true. It's so true. I think I waited the right amount of time to start getting into everything because now it's so much easier. And yeah, when it comes to monetizing and going that route, when did you know that it was time to start doing that? And when, what worked best for your site?
Yeah. So for us, it was around the time we started getting feedback from our audience that they wanted rankings. There were a lot of vocal listeners that were like, hey, where can we find your rankings? We're having difficulty finding IDP rankings. And at the time, almost nobody was putting IDP and offense together into a single set of rankings. So I saw that as a possible subscription offering. Luckily, the way I had built my website with WordPress, it was a very simple process to add that paywall to it, add that subscription. And so at first, we did, $1 a month to access these rankings. And I learned a lot from that. One is whenever you do any sort of payment with a credit card, if you're collecting the credit card information, there are fees attached, usually around 30%. So even though we were charging $1, we actually only made about 60 cents for every subscription that came through. And then also working with the public, there's always somebody's trying to get over, someone's trying to do something. So, we would get a lot of people that would purchase, and then 2 days later they would want to cancel, and they would want a refund and everything. And so, while we weren't making much to begin with, then we're refunding all of this, and it was kind of just a lot of hassle, so it's like the amount of my time going into working with somebody, recognizing why they want a refund and then processing that, just wasn't worth it. So what I started to do was think of, okay, how do we increase the value of this and offer more? And the easy answer was, that's when we launched into having a chat service, so like a Slack or a Discord, and connecting that so that if you purchased a membership, you then got access to our special community. And that allowed us to start really, kind of growing our costs, our price point, and people were happy with that. We got to interact more with subscribers and build some relationships there. Honestly, if anyone has any sort of like niche, or if you have an audience, a community, like capitalize on that, create something where you can bring them, especially in this age where Twitter could disappear tomorrow.
Right.
You gotta own your audience a little bit more, and that is definitely one way to do it. Utilizing a Patreon is a very quick and simple way to jumpstart that. And look, people are out there willing to pay for it. It was something that very much surprised me, that $5-10 a month, people they'll pay it. So if you're trying to build a living or any sort of anything off of your audience, like that's the route to go.
Yeah, you should definitely listen to your audience, because they're the people that you're you're working for, you're putting out this content for. So yeah, to hear the feedback on like what's missing or what, is missing in the space that you can provide, that's awesome to hear. And I didn't, I utilize Discord a lot and with other people and, Slack as well. It's the idea or the thought that you had about like Twitter could go away at any time, that is, I haven't even thought about like, what would I do?
That is, they call it rented medium. Facebook, Twitter, even YouTube, these are all rented spaces. You come in and you're able to use their platform, but you can't take anything away from that platform if they go away or if you get booted. It's a very real world we're living in, where right now the pendulum's swinging towards sports gambling and everything being like on the good side. There was a time where gambling was a big no-no. Like, you would get deplatformed, you would get booted off for talking about it. So, you don't want the winds of, I guess, mob mentality to dictate like how your business goes. So owning as much as you can. And, so the big thing that I push is actually collecting email addresses, making sure that you have your, direct access in that way. And, we've really started, you think of like email marketing as such like an old school, like lame, no one likes to get an email. No one wants to be spammed with, that kind of content. But having like an email newsletter and people get used to like getting your emails in, and then you can slip in something that says, hey, just so you know, like for a limited time, we have a discount on our subscription if you want it.
Yeah.
People get that. And then next thing you know, you've got an increase in sales for that month because you utilized your email marketing system and that email audience. And so that's where you can really like own your audience and promote and kind of get ahead a little bit.
Yeah, I subscribe to various newsletters with various fantasy websites. I get IDP Plus coming into my inbox. So like I enjoy that kind of stuff. So it's cool to see how you utilize that, because that's something I don't utilize is email. And who would have known? Yep. Sometimes it's just right there in front of you and you just don't see it. So let's get into like your 9-to-5 job. I assume you work from home and you have, I assumed because I was like, nobody ever has time to talk to me in the middle of the day. So, but what exactly do you do for the people listening out there?
Yeah, so I am the web and marketing director for a local IT company. It's a national brand called Evernet Consulting. And what I do is I work with generally law firms, insurance agencies, small businesses, large businesses, and just tell them, how do you increase your audience? How do you increase your sales? How do you make your website better? How do you market your product? All of the things that I do in the football industry, I get to do, daily in the real world, to be honest. And, what's been fun is I'm starting to branch into content creation within this. And, last year I started a podcast with my boss, who's the CEO, and we would talk like about... He's more on the IT side, so he'd talk about the technical stuff, and then I'm on the marketing, so I'd talk marketing. And we had enough shared knowledge that we would just go back and forth on like a subject. We did that for 6 months or so, and we marketing IT and marketing itself is very difficult in the sense that there's so much out there. There are so many people doing the exact same things, the exact same knowledge, that it becomes difficult to kind of rise above that. And so we when I first started with that company, we did kind of a scatter shot of a lot of different ideas, and slowly it's been piecing into, stuff that's been working. Like Facebook groups have been really great for us, and if they're great for what we're doing, that means you'll blow the doors off if you do it, for sports or some other industry. Email's been doing really well. And then I'm trying to think what when it comes to getting access to people, sometimes going to a gatekeeper is better than going directly to a customer. And so because we work with law firms, we've been actually partnering with bar associations and offering them free services so that they would then tell their membership, and in turn we benefit because they become clients. So that's kind of my 9 to 5, and I work from home, which is pretty great. While I wouldn't ever turn down like being able to go to like a large corporate office and feel like a bigwig. Being able to wake up like 15 minutes before I have to be at work and just walk into my bed, my office, it's pretty good. It's pretty nice.
It is pretty nice. During the whole start of the pandemic with COVID and everything, a lot of things shut down, and a lot of us worked from home. So we got to experience that. And so, I'm sure your experience during the COVID times, the quarantine times when it first started were, you were prepared for that because of what you do already. So how different was it during that time?
Yeah, so the big difference was my wife was home all the time. She works in the restaurant industry, and she got laid off and she was home. We were also planning our wedding during that time, which if I could go back, I wouldn't have a pandemic wedding, but it worked out. And so during that time, my 9 to 5, I was working for myself. I'd launched my own marketing agency in 2019 when I graduated college, and I was just starting to build up a client base essentially, and it took a long time. I would say probably about 3 years to build that. And what's interesting is I actually was getting a lot of headway in the fantasy community. I worked with Bob Lung to develop the Fantasy Football Expo website. I worked with the Campus to Canton guys to develop their website. And then I worked with, just a few others. Ball Blast. I was helping them with their website like right before they shut everything down. And so I was kind of building this reputation in the industry, or in the community, that, if you had website problems or you needed a consult, to come talk to me. And I really enjoyed that because it kind of was the merging of the two worlds of, having built all of this for myself and being in the sports industry, and then to be able to kind of switch my mentality. Okay, so like I know how I did things. How do you want to do things? And let me give you advice and how to go down that path. So that really kind of kindled this interest for me to help people, to be there to answer those questions. And I will always freely give advice. Anyone that's come, to DM me, or somebody's, referred me, I will always give you 100% of the answer. And then if I can help you, I will go, pretty far. If it's something simple, something small, I'll just, hey, give me access and I'll make the change. And I like the goodwill, especially now that I got a 9 to 5. Like, money is not an issue for me. I'm not a struggling small business owner. I will go in and do whatever I can to help you. If things really start, eats into my time with my wife and stuff. That's when I'm like, all right, let's figure out a contract here, and I'll do this on the side. But I just like to help and see people grow and be involved with a lot of things. That's I enjoy the expo. It's something different. Helping with Campus of Canton, it's something different. So that's, if anyone's listening to this, you're trying to get into the industry, please DM me. I will give you as many resources as I can, connect you with as many people that I can to get you along your way.
So you're Bob Long's website guy, because I was talking to him and he's like, oh, I'll get my website guy on that. So I knew that, but
yeah,
he didn't know, I guess, that I knew that. Yeah.
I am definitely his guy. We've been connected for probably about 3 years now, grown pretty close. I consider him a really close friend now, which is cool because like I remember meeting him when like he had no idea who I was, and he without hesitation gave me a free copy of his magazine, talked to me like I was a good friend. Like Bob has no like ego,
right?
He's just there to help. And so when I was able to kind of get that opportunity, like helping someone like that makes me want to help more and do as much as I can. So yeah, for the last couple years helping with the expo, and then he's got Big Guy Fantasy Sports, that's another website that I did.
The expo, let's talk a little bit about the Fantasy Football Expo, or maybe a lot, I don't know. It tends to be one of those conversation pieces during the podcast that people love to talk about, because if you've been, which you have, what the experience is like. But can you share for everybody like how it's been for you going to the expo?
Yeah. So the first time I went, it was 2021. So that was right after, it was the first one after the pandemic shut things down. And I believe the very first expo was 2019, which was like 75 people, and they just hung out at the bar there in the DoubleTree. This was, I guess where it was the first time I was really involved, and there was a lot of things going on. And so, I caught wind of it, and, the site was at a point where I was like, I'm curious if I go, if I can extend and, really create some excitement for the brand. And so I signed up to go, and I was like, look, we're IDP, we're really small, and, they have these VIP booths where, you could be right at the front. And I was like, man, how cool would that be to have IDP like in that main hallway and like for everyone to see? So I got a VIP booth, and then being a graphic designer, I created the booth, I the banners and everything, and kind of mapped it out and how I want it to go. And I was like, we're going to show up. We're hopefully going to be the best, presentation there and really kind of wow people. And that's what we did.
Yeah.
It was one of those things where, we had all of this stuff going on. We were giving away things, and then our presentation was just very much on point, and we made an impact. And it was one of those like wows, where I would talk to people at the parties, and they would say, oh, that was your booth, and that kind of stuff, and which was really cool. And then also around that time, we were ending our flagship podcast, the IDPGuys podcast that I had started. And so there were, some feelings about that, ending it after so long. And we actually had people coming up that were fans of the podcast. And so that was really cool when someone was like, yeah, I just listened to your recent show. I'm so disappointed that you're ending. I've been listening to you for like 2 or 3 years. And so that was really cool to kind of hear and everything. But, overall, the expo is such a great weekend of community. You get to really meet all of these people you interact with on Twitter, create friendships, relationships with. You get to kind of relax a bit too, because, you know, you're going from all these parties, you're hopefully not over drinking, though I can't say that's, you know, been the case. And you're just kind of having fun with people that have similar interests. It's one of the easiest places to talk to new people. You just walk up and say, like, hey, you know, what Scott Fishbowl division did you get into? Or who are you drafting? Or are you in it? You know, what are the leagues you're in? Like, the ability to just talk to random people is just so easy there. It starts the season for me. You know, there's the Hall of Fame game that happens the week before, which is kind of, for me, it's like it starts tingling of like, hey, the season's about to be here. But like once you hit the expo, it's like, oh, we're in it. Like this is it. We're ready to go. So
yeah, your booth was A+. You know, seeing that first one was like A+. That's, I'm gonna have a booth this year, and I'm like, there's no way in hell, for starters, that it's gonna look anything like, you know, but you know, baby steps. But it's so cool to see, especially just to I mean, boom, right there. It so bold and beautiful, you know. Mm-hmm. Okay, talking about Scott Fishbowl, we've talked a little bit about that, but really talking more about it and actually getting into like your experiences with the Scott Fishbowl and all of that. How has the Scott Fishbowl been for you, and what was your experience like so far?
Yeah, it's one of those things that I absolutely love as well. And you know, I talk about how I kind of get involved in different things, and Scott Fishbowl is definitely one of them as well. Got lucky back, I think it was Scott Fishbowl 8 was the first one I played in. I think it was TV show characters.
Oh yeah.
I was in Randy Marsh. Okay. And I just heard about the Scott Fishbowl. I think I saw it on the news as well, because they were talking about you know, this fantasy football league that's benefiting Toys for Tots. And I applied to get in, and I was one of the last wave of people. Like, I think the drafts had started and I got my invite. And so like it was really cool when I got that, and I get to be a part of it. And, you know, meeting my league mates and everything. And as it went, I was just like, okay, this is really cool. I learned about the Scott Fishbowl Avi makers. Being a graphic designer, like, it was a no-brainer to get involved with that. But when I was in school, it was very difficult for me to find time to help out. So a couple years kind of went by. And then finally I was like, okay, I'm ready to help and do this. And so I got involved. And the very first thing I found out was they were running everything off of like Google Sheets. And I was like, man, this has got to be really difficult to keep track of. And they're like, yeah, it's very difficult with, you know, the amount of people coming in, ordering. They were doing PayPal requests through Twitter DMs. And I was like, that's not very secure. You know, it's so I was like, okay, well, I do websites. I would be willing to donate one and host it for you, for, you know, and put all this together, put systems. And so I created the first Avi Makers website that streamlined, you know, the ordering process. It made, on the back end, there's a whole like workflow to make sure everyone's orders stay like no one gets missed, and we know like who's working on orders, what orders haven't been done and what are completed. And so that kind of started the growth for them and being able to scale up. And so, you know, being part of that, going to the lives, the Scott Fishbowl lives, that has been amazing. I did Boston the first year, and then last year I did New York. And this year I'm actually planning to go to 2. I'm going to do New York City for my actual draft. And then I will be attending the SFGA conference in July, which the Sunday before it will be Boston, the Boston Live. So I'm going to fly in. We've got a family event out in Michigan happening like that Saturday, and then Sunday we would be flying in. So we're just going to fly through Boston, and I'm going to stay there and go to that conference and do the live.
That's rad. Super, super dope. Yeah, I'm going to try to do 2 this year. I'm going to the Dallas one because I'm running it, but I don't think I'm drafting there because I tried that last year and it was not fun trying to draft and run. So try to get to a different one. We just have to check, schedules and how things align and everything, how that is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're so much fun, and I'm so happy that Scott was able to kind of take this step because it's almost like a mini expo. It's that exact same feeling, being able to go there, talk to these people, and because it's usually a couple weeks before the expo, you're talking about the expo and what you're going to do and everything. So it's really fun.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I met people at the Scott Fish Bowl live draft in Dallas last year, and they're like, we're going to the expo, and I'm like, I'm going to the expo. So it was like super cool having like people there that I already knew and all that other stuff. So super dope to see all of that. Yeah, there's just so much awesome stuff in this community and so many different things that just bring us together, which is awesome to see. I know there's a bad side to every so now and then you get a bad egg, but for the most part, it's such a great community to be a part of, and the charitable aspect of it all, it's just great to see. And
yeah,
I can't wait for the expo. I can't wait for the Scott Fish Bowl drafts. This is a very exciting time in life right now. So
yeah, and what great people, both Bob Lung and Scott Fish are, knowing them personally and what they've been able to build and put together. It's like, I really like helping those people succeed. Scott doesn't need my help. He was very successful, long before, but any amount of help that I can give, I try to do, and just happy to be able to help. Scott, when we launched the new Expo website, he was messaging me with his reaction to it and some stuff. So it's been, cool to get to know him as well.
Yes, for sure. Great people in this space. Those guys are the greatest. What do you like to do when you have some free time? I know that's hard to come by sometimes, but when you do have that time, what do you like to do?
Yeah. So I would say, fantasy football, building websites in fantasy football. I'm kind of a workaholic, so to speak, to the point that like I have to be very mindful of how much I do, because I've got a wife, I've got a family, I've got cats that I want to spend time with and do things and expect stuff from me, so right. I have to be mindful of that. But yeah, it's one of those things where like I used to like reading books, and now if I pick up a book, I'm thinking about, what is it that I need to do for my fantasy football website? What could I be doing for, one of the clients? Like, what's the work list on my work list? So, that's kind of a lot of my time. I like video games. That is something that I'll play periodically. Movies, TV. So, like, my best friend Johnny, who got me into football, we also will go to every Marvel movie together opening night. So that's a kind of like a staple of we've been doing since like Iron Man 3. So got to experience a lot of the greatest hits of Marvel together, and opening night and everything. I play some really nerdy board games. We've got this game. It's Star Wars X-Wing. It's like it's almost like Warhammer 4000, where you got like little miniatures and you dogfight on a table. That's something that I do. And recently I picked up golfing. I did that last year to get outside and actually touch some grass.
Touch some grass. Get that. Yeah, it feels so nice to be outside, though. Sometimes it's just good for the soul. So yeah, touch some grass.
Yeah. Working from home, I often will go weeks where it's like I only left the house to go to the grocery store. Yeah. And I don't really count that.
Right.
So it's like, I got to do something new. I got to get out. And so I bought a cheap set of golf clubs and go out and play golf once a week when it's nice out and not rainy.
I saw that you went and saw Fall Out Boy a few days ago. I know you're a big Fall Out Boy fan. How many times have you seen Fall Out Boy? Have you lost count or?
That was my first time.
Was it really?
Yes.
I'm so excited for you. Okay.
It was amazing.
That's awesome. I was excited to see that come across my feed. I was like, yeah, that's exciting. I know that you're a big fan of Fall Out Boy, so that's really dope to see. That's awesome.
Yeah, that was, you know, I remember discovering Fall Out Boy in high school watching Fuse, and I got their first, well, it wasn't their first album. I got From Under the Cork Tree, and I played that all summer going into my senior year. And I just remember, like, I was always a little bit early to the trends in my school. You know, I liked Harry Potter, you know, a couple years before everyone else. No one was really a Fall Out Boy fan, and so, like, I'd get weird looks. And so going and seeing them in concert for the first time really brought me back to that. And, you know, one of the first songs is, what is the name of it? Like, the Going Down, Sugar We're
Going Down.
Yeah, Sugar We're Going Down. And so I was just transported back to high school, and it was a little bit emotional, but it was really cool. And then I'm pretty, like, interested in, you know, pop punk. So the opener, Hot Mulligan, who I discovered on TikTok, you know, 6 months ago, they opened, and I was like, holy crap, this is really cool to see a new band that I'm just getting into with Fall Out Boy, who's, I mean, for our generation, I'm not sure of, like, who's bigger than Fall Out Boy. You know, maybe Taylor Swift, but, like, it's not, you know, they're right up there with, like, the Paramore, Green Day.
Yeah, they've been around forever. It's
yeah. So, and what the funny story from this is, I got the tickets when they went on sale, you know, right before they sold out, and I got these, like, nosebleed farthest point in the arena, up in the rafters, and they were just super cheap. And so we get there, and we get our drink, we walk up the flights of stairs to get to these tiny little seats, and we're just like, wow, this really sucks. And so I opened up the Ticketmaster app and was like, oh, hey, there's 2 floor seats. And I was like, they're only $100. Like, we could get them. And so I bought the floor seats in the rafters, and we just walked down and ended up being like maybe 15 feet away from the platform that Pete Wentz stood on to, like, lift himself up from the crowd halfway through the show. And then he walks around, you know, runs around, and he was, like, arm's reach from me. And I realized that Pete Wentz is kind of short.
Yeah.
And, you know, I always, like, I'm kind of short, and I was taller than him. And I was like, oh, hey, that's kind of cool.
There you go. You're taller than Pete Wentz. That's dope. I used to see Fall Out Boy all the time. When I was, like, in the 2000s, I was a big Cobra Starship fan, and they used to open for Fall Out Boy a lot. So I would go, you know, to see Cobra Starship but pay all this money to go to a Fall Out Boy concert. So that's how that was. I'm going to the When We Were Young Fest this year, when I'm really excited about that. So
nice. I went to the first one.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
How was that?
It was interesting. It was the first time in Vegas. We had gotten, what's cool with these festivals is they allow you to do a payment plan. And usually it's like you can secure your ticket for like $20 and then you just pay over time. So we did that. And we got tickets for, I think it was the Sunday, because the Saturday had sold out already. And, you know, we paid off our tickets. It was a anniversary gift for ourselves. And it was about a week or two before that we decided, let's look at what the, you know, resale tickets are for that Saturday, because there was a lot of, like, I know people weren't super excited. They were like, this is going to be a scam. Like
Firefest.
Yeah. And so the ticket prices were actually cheaper for that Saturday in resale than we had paid for Sunday. So we ended up getting that to go for 2 days. We get out to Vegas and there is a windstorm.
Oh, yeah.
And that Saturday was canceled. So, luckily we had Sunday. My brother and his girlfriend had also come. And so we'd met up and we're in the casino and he's like, yeah, I got tickets for both days. Like, we're good. And I was like, wait, are you sure about that? And so, it's Saturday, it's canceled, and we're looking at his ticket and he's like, oh no, this is just for Saturday. And they didn't have Sunday tickets, and like his girlfriend was pissed. And I was like, we got to look now. We got to find tickets for you
now.
Right now. And, I talk about salary cap economics and how cool that is to see. This was real-time ticket economics where everybody in, that had come for that Saturday show in Vegas was now trying to get the resale tickets. And they went from, bottom dollar, $250 a ticket. My brother paid $1,600, and every time he refreshed, the price would go up $200.
Oh my gosh.
And when he finally was able to get them to go through it, $1,600 for 2 tickets, and they were able to go that Sunday with us. And it's definitely interesting. That year we also did Boston Calling, and Boston Calling is a much well organized festival. We kind of compare a lot of things to that because they had like the wristbands with the RFID. You just walked through the gates.
Yeah, those are the best.
It ran your ticket. Security just eyeballed you, and I think they had like big like metal detectors or something to make sure like you weren't hiding something. But there was like, once the line opened up, there was no wait to get inside. With when we were young, the day that it actually opened, the queued line was like wrapping down the street. It was just not very well put together and organized. And then you had to like go through the gates. There was a check-in, and then you had to like queue up into another line, and then that line then allowed you to go into the security line. And there was just no good flow. And, it was the first year.
Yeah,
so.
I was like, hopefully they've got their stuff figured out.
Yeah.
'Cause I'm not like, my expectations are like mixed kind of right now. Because I've seen good, obviously the good stuff. I mean, I've seen the bad stuff too. So I'm like, I don't know. But I feel like that's with everything. So I just have to go into it with that mindset. Yes, exactly. It's an experience. Okay, well, before we go, because, I've learned a lot about you, but last week I did this on one of the podcasts I haven't released yet, but I had a few questions that were written by ChatGPT. ChatGPT comes up with some really good questions. So they're basically, I've got 3 questions here. Pretty simple stuff, but we'll get into it. Okay, so if you could create a fantasy football league with celebrities included in the league, is there anybody you can think of that you'd want to be in that league?
Yeah. It would be all of the celebrities that like the Detroit Lions. Keegan-Michael Key, Eminem, Taylor Lautner, Tim Allen. Though I've met Tim Allen and he's kind of a douche, but I feel like if we had a shared experience with the Lions, that would go better. Yeah, those would be kind of the people. Ninja, just because I know that he's a Lions fan. I don't know too much about him, but he's got cool hair. Yeah,
he can come too. There you go. Okay, so what is your ultimate tailgate meal?
Ooh, I would have to say like brats. It's kind of, maybe that's lame, but my sister and I went to the Patriots-Lions game, I think it was a couple years ago, and we tailgated, and that's what we made. We made some brats, and it was fun.
Excellent. I don't think I've ever tailgated, so whoops, that's my problem. Okay, last one for you from ChatGPT. They want to know, and I do too. Sure. Is there a pet peeve or a common misconception when it comes to fantasy football that kind of gets on your nerves?
Yeah, the, IDP is lame crowd, where it's like they just poop on it without really giving it a shot. I get it. It's difficult. It's different. But I think that, and actually I'll extend this to anybody that tries to control what other people do for fun,
Yeah.
just let people have fun, let people play how they want to play. And, you can say like, hey, this could be better, or give them options, but, don't shut people down. I'm a big proponent on just freedom of playing how you want to play.
Yes, I will back that 100%. 100%. Okay, Nathan. So I'm not sure I touched on everything because there's so much, and I'm sure, I'll have to have you come back again. I'm going to go back through and pick some people out, so I'll have to pick your brain again. But before we go, if there's anything else that you want to talk about, go ahead and do that now. And you can also plug your stuff and where everybody can find you.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can follow me on Twitter at Nate Cheat. That's kind of where I generally put out the random thoughts that come through my head. If you are interested in, breaking into the industry, need some help with anything, I don't care if you're brand new or you have your own website that has 30,000 subscribers, feel free to hit me up, DM me, message me. Very willing to give my advice, give answers, help as much as I can. I enjoy hearing those problems and thinking about new ways of solving common issues. So, outside of that, I hope that people who like IDP and are interested in content come and, follow at IDP_plus to hear what, great stuff that is being created. The articles, the videos, all of that stuff, consume that content. We have really great content creators there. They put a lot of time and hard work into trying to be the best at the craft. And so I hope that people listen to me and then come and kind of take that in.
Yes, definitely go check out everything that IDP Plus has going on. Go follow Nate. Go check out all that he's got going on as well. And again, I want to thank everybody for listening to this podcast. It means the world to me. Seriously, I know I say that all the time, but it's one of the best things, because I know we were talking earlier about monetization and all of that, but to me, one way to show success is just to have people back you and support you. So I appreciate that so much. Thanks everybody, 100%. Sorry I'm going in this tangent, but really wanted to thank everybody. Anyway, everyone, make sure that you come back next week for another episode of Get Real with Kacey Kasem, and make sure you remember to stay rad.
Get real. Time to get real, everybody.